The garden was quiet that morning, too quiet for the royal palace of Xylaris. Eli, the human gardener, worked alone between the glowing trees, his hands stained with silver dust from the alien soil. The air shimmered with light from the twin suns and the plants hummed softly. Almost like they were alive, he loved this place. Even if it was not his world, Eli had come to Xylaris years ago, traded by a merchant ship as a servant for the royal gardens. Most humans never returned from this planet, but he had accepted his fate. The queen had ordered him to care for the ancient trees that were older than the empire itself. Their roots reached deep into the planet's heart, drawing light and life, and from their branches grew the golden fruit known as the fruit of the ancients. The aliens said it carried the soul of their gods. No one was allowed to touch it. Not even the royal family. Eli worked carefully, trimming vines, watering leaves, sweeping paths of silver dust. He never looked directly at the forbidden fruit, though sometimes he could feel its light burning against his back. It was said that anyone who touched it would vanish. Body and soul swallowed by the roots. Eli didn't believe in myths, but he respected rules. Then one day he heard something strange, a soft sob. Like a child crying, he froze and listened. The sound came from behind the tree of dawn, the largest and oldest tree in the garden. Slowly, Eli walked closer, his boots crunching the crystal leaves beneath his feet. Behind the roots he saw a small boy, sitting on the ground, tears shining on his pale blue skin. The boy looked up when he saw Eli. His eyes were large and silver, glowing faintly in the light. Eli recognized him at once, the young prince, the only son of Queen Seraphine, ruler of all Xylaris. He bowed quickly, his heart racing. "Your Highness, are you hurt?" The prince shook his head, wiping his tears. "No, I'm just hungry," he whispered. "They said I must fast until the moon festival, but my stomach hurts." Eli felt pity rise inside him. The boy was small, weak, and far too thin for a prince. He looked around the garden, wondering if he had anything to give. There was nothing, only the forbidden tree beside them, its golden fruit glowing softly like small suns. The boy looked up at it with longing. "They say one bite can take away hunger forever," he whispered. "But Mother says it is cursed." Eli hesitated. The queen's law was clear. No one could touch the fruit. But the boy's voice was shaking, and his hands clutched his empty stomach. Eli's heart ached. He took a deep breath. Looking up at the shining branches, one fruit hung low, glowing softly like it was waiting. He reached up and touched it. The air shimmered, and the entire garden went silent for a moment. Eli felt warmth flow through his fingers. Not burning, not painful, just alive. He gently twisted the stem, and the fruit came free, glowing brighter in his hand. The boy's eyes widened. "You'll be punished," he whispered, but Eli only smiled. "Then let me be punished," he said softly. "A prince should not cry from hunger." He knelt and offered the golden fruit to the child. The boy hesitated, then took it with trembling hands. He bit into it, and the garden breathed. Every leaf shimmered with light. Every vine moved slightly as if awakening. Eli stared in awe as the boy's face changed from pale to healthy, his eyes glowing brighter. The child smiled for the first time. But before Eli could speak, the peace was shattered. A sharp alarm echoed through the air, red lights flashing through the crystal trees. The ground trembled and mechanical drones flew overhead. Scanning the garden, Eli looked around, confused. The boy dropped the half-eaten fruit, fear returning to his eyes. "It's the censors," he whispered. "They know." Guards appeared from every path, tall alien soldiers in black armor. Energy spears pointed at Eli. He raised his hands, still holding the golden glow that wouldn't fade. "What's happening?" he asked. One of the soldiers shouted. "He touched the sacred fruit. Contained the human." The prince tried to speak. "Wait. He helped me." But the soldiers ignored him. Pushing him aside, Eli was forced to the ground, his wrists locked in energy cuffs that burned cold. The air filled with the sound of wings, and then a shadow fell over the garden. The Queen of Xylaris descended from her silver throne ship, her armor shining like stars. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with fury. She looked at Eli, then at her son, then at the glowing fruit on the ground. Her voice was sharp as lightning. "Who gave you this fruit, my son?" The prince whispered, "The human, Mother." The queen turned her gaze toward Eli, her lips curved into a cold smile. "Then let this human learn what happens when mortal hands touch the divine." She raised her arm and pointed at him. "Execute the human," she said. and the garden, once peaceful and bright, fell silent as death. The order echoed across the royal garden. "Execute the human," the queen had said. The words hung in the air like a curse. Every soldier froze, every leaf trembled, and even the golden fruit dimmed its glow. Eli stood still, hands bound in glowing chains, his heart thundering in his chest. He didn't fight, didn't shout, didn't beg. He only looked at the young prince who stood frozen beside his mother, his small fingers clutching the half-eaten fruit. The queen's silver eyes glowed with divine fire, her long robe made of woven light flowing behind her. No one dared to question her command. But her son's voice broke the silence, small yet trembling with courage. "Mother, please," the prince said, stepping forward. "He didn't mean harm." The queen turned sharply. "Silence, Kyle," she snapped. Her voice carried the authority of 1,000 generations. "The law is clear. No being, not even royal blood, may touch the fruit of the ancients." She pointed at Eli again. "That fruit is not food, it is power." The prince's lower lip quivered. "But I was hungry," he whispered. He only wanted to help. For a moment, a flicker of hesitation passed across the queen's face, but it vanished quickly. Replaced by cold anger, she raised her hand, and the guards dragged Eli away, their armor humming with energy. Eli didn't resist. He looked around the glowing garden he had cared for so long, now filled with fear and anger. He could feel the eyes of the alien nobles watching from the balconies, whispering among themselves. "The human has broken the sacred law," one hissed. "He will bring ruin upon us all," said another. The queen turned to the high priest, a tall, ancient alien whose body was wrapped in living vines. "Seal the garden," she commanded. "The trees must not be touched until the curse is lifted." The priest bowed. "As you command, your radiance," the prince tried to run after the guards, but his mother stopped him with a gesture. "Enough," she said softly. "You will forget the human." Kale's eyes filled with tears. "But he saved me, Mother." The queen looked down at him, her voice hard but her tone breaking slightly. "You are my only son, Kyle. If you had eaten the whole fruit, you would not be standing here." She turned away before her son could see the pain in her eyes. The forbidden fruit was not merely sacred, it was dangerous long ago. Their ancestors had locked away its power after it nearly destroyed the world. No alien had dared to taste it since that day. As the soldiers dragged Eli through the glowing halls of the palace, whispers followed him like ghosts. Some aliens spat at him, calling him tainted. Others looked away in pity. He heard one of them mutter, "No human has ever lived after touching the sacred light." They reached the dungeon beneath the palace. Massive doors carved from black stone opened, revealing a tunnel that smelled of dust and roots. The guards shoved him inside, locking heavy metal cuffs around his wrists. One of them, an older soldier with scarred armor, looked at him and said quietly, "You should have let the boy cry. Human." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Eli in the darkness. In the royal chamber above, the queen sat alone. Her hand rested on the glowing throne, but her mind was elsewhere. The image of the boy eating the forbidden fruit burned in her thoughts. The fruit was meant to destroy those who touched it, but Kale looked stronger, brighter, even alive in a way she had never seen. She called for her high priest. "Tell me the truth," she said, her voice low. "What happens when a mortal gives the fruit willingly?" The priest hesitated, his vines tightening around his body. "My queen, the prophecy speaks of such a moment," he whispered. "When the sacred fruit is given by compassion, the gods of old will awaken again." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Prophecies are lies told by cowards," she said sharply. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her doubt. She dismissed the priest and turned toward the great window. Far in the distance, she could see the sacred garden glowing faintly, and for the first time in years, the light of the fruit had not faded. It was growing brighter. Down below, in his cold cell, Eli sat in silence. The chains burned his wrists, but his mind was calm. He replayed the moment when he gave the fruit to the crying child. He didn't regret it. Not even now, his hand still glowed faintly with golden light. He didn't know what it meant, but deep down, he felt the garden wasn't done with him yet outside. The twin moons of Xylaris rose over the palace. The queen stood at her window, and the boy slept clutching the glowing stem of the half-eaten fruit. The same strange golden light shone faintly on both of them, the condemned human below, and the alien prince above, and somewhere deep under the roots of the garden, something ancient began to stir. The air was cold and heavy beneath the palace. Far below the glowing towers of Zalaris lay a place no sunlight reached. The prison beneath the roots, it was where forgotten souls were sent to vanish. Eli sat alone in a small stone cell, the walls covered with tangled roots that pulsed with faint golden light. He had been there for 3 days, maybe more. Time moved strangely underground. He had no window, no warmth, only the distant echo of dripping water and the slow heartbeat of the earth above him. The guards brought food once a day, gray bread and bitter water, but he barely touched it. At night, strange whispers filled the air. He first thought they were the wind, but there was no wind in this place. The whispers seemed to come from the roots themselves. They moved, slowly curling toward him as if listening. When he touched one by accident, it pulsed brighter, almost warm. He pulled back quickly, fear and wonder mixing inside him. Each day he stared at his hands, they still glowed faintly. A soft gold that refused to fade. The same glow that had appeared when he touched the forbidden fruit. The same glow that the queen had called a curse. He whispered to himself, if this is a curse, why doesn't it hurt? Instead of pain, he felt something else, peace, calm, life. He could hear the faint sound of roots breathing, as though the garden above was alive and aware of him. One night, while he lay half asleep, he heard a quiet sound outside his cell. Footsteps, small and careful. He sat up quickly, expecting a guard instead. A small shape slipped through the shadows. It was the prince, Your Highness, Eli whispered in shock. You shouldn't be here. The boy's silver eyes shone in the dim light, and his voice trembled. I had to see you, he said. Mother doesn't know I'm here. He carried a small basket wrapped in silk. I brought you food. Real food, he said proudly, handing it over. Inside was soft bread, sweet fruit, and a small flask of water that shimmered faintly blue. Eli stared at him, torn between gratitude and worry. You shouldn't risk this, he said softly. If they find you here, I don't care, Cale interrupted. You saved me and they call you cursed, but you didn't curse me. He lifted his sleeve. Showing his arm, it glowed faintly. The same golden light as Eli's hands. Ever since I ate the fruit, I feel stronger, Cale whispered. I don't get tired anymore and I don't feel sick. Eli's eyes widened. Then the fruit didn't harm you, he said. The boy shook his head. No, I think it healed me. Eli looked toward the roots above. Maybe the old stories were wrong. Maybe the fruit wasn't forbidden. It was just misunderstood. The prince leaned closer, lowering his voice. Mother is afraid, Eli, he said. The priests told her the prophecy about a human who would awaken the old gods. Eli frowned. Old gods? Kyle nodded. They said the gods once walked among us, but when the first human touched the fruit long ago, they vanished. They fear your touch means they'll return, Eli sighed. I'm no god, Cale. I'm just a gardener who made a mistake. The boy smiled sadly. Then it's a good mistake. They both laughed quietly, their voices echoing softly in the dark cell. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed down the corridor, the heavy steps of guards. Cale froze, eyes wide. Go, Eli whispered urgently. If they catch you here. The boy hesitated, tears forming again. I'll come back. I promise. He turned and ran into the shadows, disappearing through a hidden crack in the wall. Moments later, 2 guards passed by, their armor clanking. They looked into the cell but saw nothing unusual. Eli kept his head down until they were gone. When the silence returned, he looked up at the glowing roots again. They were brighter now, reaching deeper into the cell like golden veins. Eli slowly touched one. The moment his skin met the living root, a rush of warmth filled him. He saw flashes in his mind, images of the garden, the queen, the child, and something vast beneath the soil. A great tree, ancient and awake, its voice echoing like thunder. The seed has been given, it whispered inside his mind. The cycle begins again. Eli gasped and fell back. His heart pounding, he stared at his glowing hands, terrified and amazed. What are you? He whispered to the root. But there was no answer, only a soft hum that made the stone walls tremble. Above him, in her royal chamber, the queen couldn't sleep. The sacred garden's light was growing stronger each night, and though she didn't know it yet, the source of that power was no longer the fruit. It was the human imprisoned beneath the roots, and the planet itself had begun to awaken. The royal city of Zalaris shone like a jewel against the black sky. Thousands of silver towers rose toward the twin moons, but inside the grand hall of the palace the air was thick with fear. The queen had called for an emergency meeting of the Council of the Stars. The highest rulers of her world, Eli's act, the giving of the forbidden fruit, had shaken the empire. Rumors spread across every planet under her rule. Some said a curse had awakened, others whispered of prophecy, and all agreed on one thing: the queen must act before the gods returned. The council chamber was shaped like a circle. Its floor glowed with lines of ancient symbols. Around the circle sat 12 alien nobles, lords, priests, and generals, all with faces carved from pride and fear. At the center stood the queen, tall and radiant, her crystal armor reflecting the starlight above. She raised her hand for silence. "Speak," she said, her voice echoing like thunder. The high priest rose first, his body wrapped in vines that pulsed with faint green light. "My queen," he said, "the signs are clear, the prophecy has begun." The human touched the sacred fruit, and now the roots glow once more. "The gods are stirring," the queen frowned. "Superstition," she said coldly. "The gods are myths from a forgotten age." But another voice rose from the other side of the circle, General Theros, commander of the planetary fleet, his scales shining dark blue under the light. "My queen, the fruit has not glowed in 1,000 years, yet now even the sky above the garden burns gold." He leaned forward, his tone sharp. "If this human has awakened something ancient, we must destroy it before it destroys us." A low murmur spread across the chamber. The priest nodded. "The law of the ancestors is clear. When the forbidden fruit is touched by mortal hands, the world must be purified." He turned to the queen, his vines rustling. "You must burn the garden and execute the human before the corruption spreads." The queen's face remained calm, but her hands clenched behind her back. She remembered her son's words, the way he had said the human had saved him, the way the fruit had healed instead of harmed, but she could not show doubt before her council. She lifted her chin and said, "I have already ordered his execution at dawn." The nobles bowed, some satisfied, others afraid. The priest lowered his head in approval. "The gods will be silent again," he said softly, but deep inside the queen felt no peace. When the meeting ended, she stayed behind, alone in the great hall. The light from the twin moons fell through the glass ceiling, painting her in silver and blue. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "If the gods still watch, forgive me for what I must do." Outside the chamber, a small figure hid behind a column, Prince Kyle. He had overheard every word. Tears filled his eyes as he ran back to his room. His small hands shaking, he could not let Eli die in his room. He opened a secret drawer in his desk. Inside was an old hollow tablet, one that belonged to his late father. He activated it, and a small light appeared, forming the image of a map. The tunnels beneath the palace, leading to the prison and beyond the roots, he whispered to himself. "Father said there's always another way." He grabbed his cloak, covered his glowing arm with bandages, and slipped out into the night. Meanwhile, deep below the palace, Eli could feel something changing. The air around him was warmer, the golden roots pulsing faster like a heartbeat. He closed his eyes and heard whispers again. But this time the voice was stronger, clear and deep. "The fruit's power was never a curse," it said. "It was a gift stolen by fear," Eli whispered back. "Who are you?" "I am the memory of the world," the voice answered. "And you have awakened me." The ground trembled slightly. Dust falling from the ceiling, Eli gasped, gripping the wall. He could feel energy moving under the floor, spreading upward. Something was alive down there, something vast and ancient. Far above, the queen stood at her balcony, staring toward the horizon. The garden glowed brighter than ever, a golden storm swirling above the sacred trees. She felt a strange pull in her chest, like the world itself was calling her name. Then she heard a whisper carried by the wind. It was faint, almost impossible, but she could swear it spoke in human words. "Mercy brings life," it said. Her eyes widened. She turned toward the temple where the execution was to take place. For the first time in her life, Queen Seraphine felt fear not for her throne, but for what would happen if she ignored that voice. And as dawn approached, two paths were set into motion, one of death, led by the queen's command, and one of hope, led by a prince who refused to forget the man who gave him life. Dawn arrived like a blade cutting the sky in half. A crimson light spilled over the palace towers, touching the prison walls deep below. It was the hour of execution. The guards marched through the corridors with heavy boots. Their armor gleamed with cold blue light. their faces hidden behind silver masks. At the end of the hallway, Eli stood, wrists bound in glowing chains, his clothes torn and covered in dust. He looked calm, almost peaceful, though his heart beat fast beneath his chest. 2 guards grabbed his arms and pushed him forward. They led him up the long spiral stair that wound through the palace roots as he climbed. He could feel the strange warmth again, the same warmth from the forbidden fruit. It pulsed softly through his veins like quiet fire. The queen waited in the courtyard above. Her face was unreadable as she looked down at the human kneeling before her. The nobles stood behind her, and the high priest began chanting ancient words. The mortal has touched the divine, the roots must be cleansed with blood. Eli bowed his head. He didn't beg, didn't speak, but somewhere behind the walls, a different sound began to rise, metal scraping against stone and the faint hum of energy. No one noticed, not even the queen, until the ground trembled, and a section of the wall burst open. Out of the dust ran a small figure in a dark cloak. Prince Kale. "Stop," he shouted, his voice breaking. "You can't do this." Guards rushed to block him, but he raised his small hand, and a burst of golden light exploded from his palm. It threw the soldiers backward, their armor cracking under the shockwave. Everyone froze. The queen's eyes widened. "Kyle, what have you done?" she whispered. The boy turned to her, tears glistening in his silver eyes. "He saved me, Mother. He's not cursed, he's chosen." Before anyone could react, he ran to Eli and touched the glowing chains. The moment his fingers met them, they shattered like glass. Eli looked at the boy in disbelief. "Go," Kale whispered. "The garden will protect you." The guards recovered quickly, shouting orders. Arrows of light flew through the air, missing Eli by inches as he grabbed the prince's hand. Together they sprinted toward the edge of the courtyard. The roots under their feet moved, forming steps that led toward a tunnel beneath the palace. It was as if the world itself wanted them to escape. They ran through the tunnels, breathless and desperate. Behind them, alarms blared and the queen's voice roared through the intercom. "Seal every gate. Find the human and bring my son back alive." The tunnel opened into the sacred forest beyond the palace walls. Eli stumbled out into the light, gasping. The forest was unlike anything on earth. Every tree was alive with shimmering veins of light, and their leaves whispered in strange tones. The air smelled of rain and metal and ancient magic. The boy looked up. "The living forest," he said softly. "They say no one who enters comes out again." Eli placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then it's the perfect place to hide," he said with a small smile. They stepped inside. The forest floor glowed beneath their feet, reacting to Eli's presence. Vines shifted aside as if bowing to him. The trees leaned gently, forming a path through the glowing mist. Kale stared in awe. "It listens to you." Eli shook his head. "No, it remembers me." For hours they moved through the forest. The deeper they went, the stranger the world became. Streams of silver water floated in the air. Flowers bloomed as they passed, their petals humming softly like lullabies. Yet Eli could feel something beneath it all, an ancient heartbeat echoing from the ground. It was the same presence he had felt in the prison, the same voice whispering in the dark. When night fell, they stopped beside a pool of light. The boy leaned against him, exhausted. Eli looked at the stars through the treetops and whispered, "We'll find a way, Kale, I promise." But the peace did not last. The sound of engines rumbled in the distance, search drones, dozens of them, cutting through the trees with blinding beams of blue light. The forest reacted, the ground shifted, roots rising like walls, branches weaving into barriers. The forest was defending them. Eli grabbed the boy and pulled him deeper into the glowing mist. Behind them, the drones crashed against living wood that refused to burn. Bolts of plasma flashed, lighting the sky. Then the earth itself rose in defense, massive roots breaking through the soil, crushing the machines one by one. Eli and Kale stopped running. Standing in the heart of the forest, there in the center, stood a massive stone gate covered in alien symbols. It pulsed with golden light, the same light from Eli's hands. Kale whispered, "What is this place?" Eli stepped forward slowly, feeling the hum beneath his feet. "I think it's the beginning," he said softly, "or the memory of it." And as the forest fell silent again, the gate began to open. Light poured out, bathing them both, and far behind, the Queen's army hesitated at the forest's edge, because the trees themselves were whispering now, whispering the name of the human who defied death, the one who gave the forbidden fruit, the one the gods had chosen to awaken. The stone gate opened with a sound like thunder. The ground shook and the air turned warm and golden. Eli shielded his eyes as light poured out. Brighter than the twin suns of Xylaris, Kale clung to his arm, trembling but refusing to let go. When the light faded, they stood before something vast, a circular chamber beneath the roots of the living forest. In its center grew a tree larger than any they had seen. Its trunk was made of crystal, its leaves shimmered like glass, and its roots stretched out in every direction, pulsing with golden veins that seemed alive. Eli took a step closer, feeling the same warmth from before. The tree spoke not with words, but with a voice that filled his mind. Child of Earth, the fruit you gave was not forbidden. It was forgotten. Eli froze, his breath caught in his chest. Kale looked around, frightened. Who said that? The voice came again, softer now, echoing from the roots. I am the heart root, the memory of this world, keeper of the bond between your kind and mine. Eli frowned. My kind? You mean humans? Yes, the voice answered. Before the stars were divided, humans and Xylarans shared this world, bound by the gift of life, the fruit of the ancients. Eli's hands began to glow again. Stronger this time. Kale watched in awe as the golden veins along the roots responded, brightening in rhythm with his heartbeat. But they said the fruit is cursed, Eli said. It became a curse because of fear, the voice replied. When your people left the stars, the Xylarans claimed the fruit for themselves and forgot compassion. Only when a heart gives without desire can the fruit's true power return. Eli understood now. The fruit wasn't a weapon, it was a test of kindness, of trust, of love. He had passed it the moment he fed a crying child. Kale stepped closer, his voice small. Then, my mother was wrong? The light around them flickered softly. No, said the voice. She is lost in fear as her ancestors were. But even fear can be healed. Eli knelt before the glowing trunk. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. The light spread through the chamber, forming shapes in the air. Images of burning worlds, dead gardens, cities crumbling into dust. This planet dies, the voice said. The roots weaken, the stars fade. But through your gift, life stirs again. The bond between worlds can be restored if you accept the burden. Eli's hands trembled. What burden? The light dimmed slightly. To be guardian of the garden, to carry the fruit's life in your soul, and to awaken what was lost. Kale looked up at him, eyes wide with fear. That means you can't go back. Eli smiled faintly, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Maybe I was never meant to go back, he said softly. But you can, your people can change. Before Kale could answer, the ground above them roared with explosions. The Queen's army had reached the forest. Energy cannons fired, setting fire to the outer trees. The roots shuddered, glowing brighter as if in pain. Kale turned toward the light. Mother is here, he said, his voice breaking. Eli looked up at the glowing ceiling. Then it's time she saw the truth. He placed his hands on the heart root's trunk. Golden light burst through his body. Flooding the chamber, the glow traveled upward, through the roots, through the soil, through the forest, above ground. Soldiers froze as the light surged out from beneath their feet. Their weapons melted, their armor cracked, and the flames died instantly. The Queen arrived at the forest's edge. Her eyes wide, the golden light reached her too, warm and alive, wrapping around her armor. She stumbled forward, gasping as visions filled her mind. Visions of humans and Xylarans living together, planting gardens, sharing the same fruit and peace. Her voice broke. This was our beginning. The light pulled her forward until she stood at the entrance of the ancient gate. There she saw them, her son and the human standing in the heart of the golden glow. The Queen fell to her knees. Kyle, she whispered, my son. What have you done? Kale ran to her, tears on his face. I didn't destroy us, Mother. I saved us. The Queen looked at Eli. He glowed like a living star, yet his expression was gentle. The fruit chose mercy over fear, he said softly. It was never forbidden. Your Majesty, only forgotten. The Queen bowed her head. Her pride fading like mist under sunlight, she whispered, Then let the world remember. The heart root's light reached its peak. The ground pulsed once, twice, then released a wave of energy that spread across the planet. Dead lands bloomed again, skies cleared, rivers shone, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the world of Xylaris breathed in peace. Eli's body began to fade into light. Cale clutched his arm, crying, "No! Don't go." Eli smiled softly. "I'm not leaving, little one. I'm becoming part of the garden." And with those final words, he vanished into the golden roots. The forest sang, and every leaf whispered his name far above. The queen looked to the sky and whispered through her tears, "Guardian of the garden, the world will not forget you again." The world of Xylaris was silent after the light faded. The sky, once red and cold, now glowed with golden clouds. The sacred trees, long asleep, swayed gently in the wind, their leaves whispering a name that echoed across the empire. Eli the queen stood in the heart of the living forest, her silver armor cracked and covered in dust. Around her, the royal soldiers knelt in awe, their weapons useless against what they had just witnessed. The ground beneath them pulsed with new life, roots spreading through the soil, turning ash into green. For the first time in her reign, Queen Seraphine felt small, not as a ruler, but as a mother who had almost destroyed her own world. She looked down at her hands, still glowing faintly gold, the same light that had poured from Eli when he vanished into the heartroot, a gift that could have saved her world centuries ago, if only they had chosen compassion over fear. Prince Cale stood beside her, his small hands still trembling. His eyes no longer held the innocence of a child. They held understanding. "Mother," he said softly, "he's gone, isn't he?" The queen nodded slowly, her voice quiet. "He's not gone, Cale. He's everywhere now." The boy looked around, and the forest seemed to breathe in answer. Golden petals fell from the trees like snow, each one glowing with soft light. He caught one in his palm and whispered, "It's warm." The queen smiled faintly. "That warmth is his gift to us." As they stood there, the high priest approached, his vines dim and trembling. "My queen," he said carefully, "the council awaits your command. The people are afraid. They say the gods have awakened." The queen turned to face him, her voice calm but firm. "They have not awakened," she said. "We have." The priest bowed deeply, ashamed. For centuries, he had preached fear. Fear of the fruit, fear of humans, fear of change. Now he saw the truth that one human gardener had shown them all. The fruit had never been forbidden. It had been waiting. The queen raised her voice so that all could hear. "Eli was no curse," she said. "He was a reminder. A human who gave without wanting power, who shared life when others hoarded it." Her eyes swept over her soldiers, her council, and the glowing forest beyond. "From this day forward, no hand will be punished for giving. No kindness will be called a sin." The soldiers bowed, and even the forest seemed to hum in approval. Cale stepped forward, holding up the half-eaten golden fruit he had kept hidden since that day in the garden. It glowed faintly, still alive. "Then let this be our new symbol," he said, "not of fear, but of hope." The queen took the fruit in her hands and raised it to the light. A warm breeze swept through the trees, carrying golden dust into the air. It shimmered like stars, floating up toward the sky until the entire forest glowed like dawn. Every living thing on Xylaris, plants, animals, and people, felt it. A pulse of calm, of healing, of connection far away, on distant moons and colonies. The light reached every corner of the empire, and across the stars, old seeds long forgotten began to bloom again. The fruit's power was spreading, not as a weapon, but as life reborn. That night, the queen returned to the royal garden, the place where it had all begun. The soil there was alive again, the trees glowing gently, their roots singing low and deep. She knelt before the largest tree and placed her hand upon it. "Forgive me," she whispered, "for the centuries of fear, for the chains we forged with our own hands." The roots shifted slightly beneath her touch. A soft voice, warm and familiar, murmured through the leaves. "Fear ends when hearts remember kindness." She closed her eyes, tears running down her face. It was Eli's voice, faint but real, echoing from the roots when she opened her eyes again. The stars were brighter. The golden veins across the soil glowed like rivers of light. She rose to her feet, and Cale stood beside her, holding a small seed that the forest had given him. He looked up at her, his voice quiet but strong. "What should we do with it, Mother?" She smiled softly. "We plant it, my son, and we protect it." They knelt together and pressed the seed into the warm earth. The soil glowed around it, and a tiny sprout rose instantly, shining gold under the moonlight. A new beginning. The queen looked to the sky, where faint golden light still drifted among the stars. She whispered one final time, "Guardian of the garden, your world lives." And somewhere in the wind, faint but unmistakable, came a whisper in reply. Then my purpose is complete. The leaves rustled. The stars pulsed once, and peace finally returned to Xylaris. Not through power, not through fear, but through one small act of kindness that changed a galaxy forever.